I'm done trying to live up to others' expectations. Family, society, class, race, sex, or religions. It's time to break free from the isms that make us feel like we're in prison. I'm ready to be unleashed as fuck. I'm ready to be unleashed as fuck. Tired of the madness, done with the sadness. Gonna break free and be unleashed.
Woo! Every time I hear that, I'm just like banging my head in the background.
I know.
I love it. Welcome to the show, Unleashed AF. I'm one of your hosts, Deidre Beecham. I am a speaker and a visibility catalyst, and I help you to overcome self-doubt and launch into confidence in your life. And my co-host over here is Jenny Baddick. Jenny, go ahead and introduce yourself.
I'm Jenny Baddick, the inner space engineer. I help through my background of human factors engineering and hypnotherapy. I help you design the life that you want, starting from the inside out.
I love that. I love that. And the show, we started this show to help you to get unleashed. There's so many different leashes out there in the world, and we've had some amazing guests so far, and we have a lot lined up for this month. But this month, it's Pride.
That's right.
So we're celebrating Pride, and Jenny and I thought at the last minute, as we were thinking about the month coming up, and we thought, wow, well, what if we did coming out stories? And that would be very interesting and a way to celebrate our brothers and sisters who have quite a significant social leash around them. And so that's kind of where we're starting today.
I would even go so far as to say it's one of those braided leashes like we talked about before.
Yeah.
Multiple leashes, really, for most people, probably, in terms of their coming out story.
Yeah, and you were mentioning beforehand, and I hadn't really thought about it this way because everybody has a coming out story. Everybody does. But you made a really interesting point because you said there's probably everybody has several coming out stories. And I hadn't really thought about that until you brought that up.
It's definitely different, right? It's different to come out to different people in your life.
Yeah, and the first one is to me, I thought, the most terrifying. But after that, while it gets easier, some are harder than others. You know, it's crazy that you have to come out in any respect anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hopefully someday that that won't be an issue anymore, but we're not there yet. That's for sure.
No, we are not there yet. So to get started, we're going to go ahead and interview me. So I don't know if you want to go ahead and introduce me as the guest today for our coming out month.
Sure. So please welcome everyone. Deidre Beecham, a dynamic speaker and visibility catalyst dedicated to empowering high-achieving women. Through her Flex Unmask Power Voice workshop, Deidre helps women overcome imposter syndrome, embrace their authentic selves, and step into their power voice. With a unique blend of personal stories. Ooh, I need to get my power voice a little better. A unique blend of personal stories, practical advice, and inspiring insights, Deidre guides women to transform self-doubt into unshakable confidence. Today, she's here to share her wisdom and inspire us all.
Woohoo! That sounds nice.
It does, doesn't it? It's always nice to kind of hear that about yourself. And we were talking about this before we went live too, about how sometimes what we get described as either by others or like in the public realm isn't always how we show up at home. Right?
Absolutely. Yeah, that's right. We're talking about Tig because she was talking with her wife and looking at all these amazing testimonials that people were saying about Tig and her performance. And her wife's like, this is not the person that I see at home. It was pretty funny. So I think it's important, to hear those things about yourself sometimes. I love that.
Yeah. So with it being Pride Month, and we've talked about how we've decided, as much as possible anyway, unless something huge comes up that we decide we need to focus on.
That has happened.
There's more convictions that could come down.
You never know.
So today, though, we wanted to start with Deidre because not only because, she's one of the hosts, but she has a really interesting kind of connection, I think, with her coming out story and how it relates to other leashes and things like that. So I think it's a great way to kind of kick off this series that we're doing, to hear straight from you about your coming out story. So tell us,
Awesome.
Deidre.
Thank you. So, yeah, I came out really late. So I had been married 18 years. And it's very interesting because I'm now married to my wife, and it's interesting when I first met her, she kept saying, how did you not know? How did you not know? Because I'd be describing something about my, the color of my umbrella, or how I wore a belt buckle when I was a kid, and just different things that I would tell her, and she'd like, how did, and you didn't know? You really didn't know. And I think there was always a little part of me that knew when I was a kid. I had a crush on Kenny Jenkins and Nancy Proctor. Equal crushes on each one. But I knew, that for some reason the crush on Nancy was not a good idea. There certainly wasn't representation on television or anything when I was a kid.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just knew that wasn't something that was supposed to be pursued.
Yeah.
It was not something to be pursued. And it really didn't come up again, really, until, I had moved. I was in my 20s, and it had come up because I had just broken up with a guy, and I just didn't want to date anybody else because I was really attracted to a woman, and I was like, I don't want to know if that's true. And so I put a leash on myself. I was like, I don't even want to know. So I didn't date anybody for a long time. So yeah, I got married, had children, and at 18 years of marriage, I was like, wow, I can't do this for another 18 years. I just can't. I can't. And I thought, I really want to pursue this part of me that I've never explored. And, but I also realized, wow, I'm married. and obviously it wasn't a great marriage, obviously, or I wouldn't have been thinking so much about this. Because I'm not a lesbian. People are like, well, you're a lesbian. I'm like, no, I'm bisexual. And if I had a super happy marriage, there's a good chance I never would have explored it. But it wasn't a happy marriage. And I just couldn't imagine being in this marriage for another 18 years. So the first, I was thinking about kind of those two big stories. The first one was my best friend. And I went to her. I'm like, we need to get together. I've got to tell you something. And then she's like, okay. We went to a Mexican restaurant and we sat down, and we would do that a lot. Love to drink margaritas. And we got there, and she's like, all right, what do you want to tell me? I'm like, no, we need to drink first.
You're excited, but not yet.
You need to drink, and I definitely need drinks.
Right.
Because I just had no idea how she was going to handle it. And I was so worried and so concerned and so bottled up. And then finally I just looked at her and I'm like, I want to date women. And she's like, okay. Like,
was that what you expected or not what you expected?
No. Oh God. I didn't know what to expect. I mean, it was absolutely terrifying. Because there's all these things you're thinking. Is she going to reject me? Is she going to walk away? Is she going to stare blankly at me? I mean, it was really the best thing that she could have done. Just like, yeah, and
well, now, so let's go back were you already in the process of ending your marriage at this point, or did she not even have an idea that you were in an unhappy marriage? Like, what did she even know about
Yeah,
where
no,
you?
she definitely knew I was in an unhappy marriage. We had talked about, my husband and I had talked about getting divorced. And well, of course, he was the first person I told, but really, but we weren't divorced.
Okay.
We were separated. And he was all for me going ahead and dating. Even though our divorce hadn't come through yet, he was like, yeah, go ahead and explore. He's a good guy. I mean, he really is a good guy. We just weren't a fit. We just weren't a fit with each other. So yeah, she did know that I wasn't happy. And evidently she knew that I wanted to date women. So it wasn't a deal with her. It wasn't a deal breaker for her. You know,
Yeah.
it's just never been a problem for her.
And it sounds
Yeah.
like she didn't feel threatened by it either, I guess, would be another scenario.
No, and that's interesting because that happens. And that's the crazy thing. I came out to another friend of mine, went up and visited her up in Virginia. And when I told her, and I've known her since elementary school, 5th grade, I've known her since 5th grade. And when I came out to her, she was like, so are you attracted to me? I'm like, no, ew. I mean, and I was like, not ew because you're not attractive. I mean, because you're my friend. I mean, I've known you since we were kids. No, I'm not interested in you. That's not how this works. You know, it's not like I'm just attracted to every girl now or every guy. I mean, I still have standards. Not that you aren't wonderful.
Yeah. There's some ways to get tied up in that one. But I mean, honestly, it does seem like that's almost the error in some people's thinking that don't understand the gender thing. Like, it's like they feel like anybody who is something different than them, it threatens them because they think, oh, now they could be, I don't know, coming after me or something. Like, I don't know. It's something about, it's like they're afraid of, well, how am I supposed to interact with them now or something? Because what if
you know what just struck me is that I wonder if for some women it's a difficult thing because as far as receiving that information from a friend, because their whole life, every woman is taught, at least every woman that I know has been taught from a very young age that, you know, men can be predators and you need to be careful and blah, blah, blah. And now your friend comes out to you. Oh my gosh, do I need to be careful with her?
Oh,
I'm wondering. I mean, it just struck me.
Yeah.
That maybe that's where that comes from. That, you know, I have to watch out for you now. And one of the things that she asked me, she said, so were you, I mean, did you have a thing for me when we were growing up? And I was like, no, no. Never, ever thought of it. And, you know, she said friends of hers had warned her about me. And I said, warned you about what? And she said that you were a homo. And I was like,
as a kid?
Yeah. I said, first of all, I didn't know. No, I just liked you because you were fun and cool. It was never a sexual attraction thing ever. And still not. No. Yeah. So yeah, but I hadn't thought about that before. I wonder if that's one of the things that happens just at a subconscious level because we grow up with that, and that's why it's so scary for some women when their friends come out.
Yeah, could be. Because I think part of the braided leash, I would say, around sexuality is, and this is a US thing, and I don't even think it would be the same in Europe, from what I understand. I haven't been there, but you know, like there's this whole, like, it's not something we should speak about. We shouldn't show sexual parts of our bodies, those kinds of things. It's just so taboo, a lot because of religion, but just culture in general also has kind of adopted a lot of that kind of no nudity, no, you know, suggestiveness. And I mean, just think about so for people who may not know, we both grew up basically in the 80s, right? I mean, that was kind of, we were born in the
Oh, yeah.
70s, or like you were, when were you born?
68.
60?
I was born in
Okay.
68.
So
So, yeah, I'm
70s and
kinda
80s was like our growing up, our youth. And back then there was a huge push for conservative family values, don't
oh my
even,
god,
not supposed
yes.
to even curse on TV, and don't show anything that could be suggestive like cleavage, or there was just so much that was being kind of shoved in our faces about, oh no, don't say that, don't do that. Where, yeah, I guess in that case, it could be any kind of thing that could be considered, flirtatious or something. Not that you were saying anything flirtatious, but the potential for there to be some kind of romantic thing that's taboo might have been enough, for people to go, oh, wait a minute, am I getting into something here? Like, why'd you tell me? Are you trying to ask me out? Like, I can see where that could maybe flip some people.
Yeah, and it was really strange. I mean, here I am in my late 40s sitting down with my friend that I've been friends with since 5th grade, and she's going, "Oh, so were you attracted to me?" I'm like, "No. That's not why I'm telling you either.
Mm-hmm.
I just want you to know and still love me."
Yeah.
And it was hard for her at first, and that was hurtful.
Mm.
That was hurtful to know somebody for that long in my life, and then for her to be scared to be around me because of her religion. And it wasn't until her husband said, "Well, look, she's still the same person." Right? I mean, she was this person for all of these years that you've been friends, 30 years.
Mm-hmm.
She's still the same person. And so it took her
Yeah.
husband to help her to come around. So
Wow.
that was very painful. But that's religion for you.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Yeah,
that was
definitely.
kind of sad. I think it's the same reason, societal pressures and et cetera, that, people before me haven't come out, and people still now aren't coming out.
Yeah. And I feel like there's some segment of the population that somehow believes that it's just because it's being talked about more, or there are books about it that they then want to ban, that have caused more people to be gay or be anything in the spectrum.
Which is ridiculous.
Right.
Which is absolutely ridiculous. Just because, there's a great, what is it? What
are you talking about? The thing that you sent me, like the meme or something?
I don't know, because I just lost my complete train of thought.
Sorry. So let me tell you.
So let's move along.
Well, the thing that was coming up for me that was related to that kind of got my attention was when there was something on the internet that talked about hair color being not a choice, right? Like being a blonde or a brunette or a redhead, like that's not a choice. So why do you think that that's a genetic thing, right? I mean, that's
I think one of the best ones that I saw was where
left-handed, right-handed. That's what it was, right?
Yeah.
Left-handed, right-handed, I think was actually what it was, not hair color.
Yeah, because it used to be, thank you. It used to be that it was considered that you were possessed by a demon if you were left-handed. Mm-hmm. And I know this, I have firsthand knowledge of this, because my great-grandmother, when she was in school, she was telling me about how when she was in school, she was left-handed. She was naturally left-handed. And the nuns would come around and whack her on her knuckles if they saw her using her left hand. And she'd come home just in serious pain and just crying, because they weren't allowed to use their left hand. And because of that, there were very few people that were left-handed. Now, is it because there weren't any people with left hands, that weren't left-handed? No. It's just that they were scared to get their knuckles whacked when they were in school.
Right.
And once they stopped demonizing being a left-handed person, which we all know leads more to creativity, your right brain hemisphere is anyway. It just means that because we aren't demonizing people, people are being like, oh, okay, well, hey, by the way, I'm left-handed. And so we saw a significant rise in people saying, hey, I'm left-handed, because they weren't being demonized anymore. We had a very similar thing happen when the Marriage Equality Act passed. It was like, finally, not being demonized. And so, yes, people started coming out of the woodwork and saying, yeah, that's me. That's me. And they finally felt safe. And so, yeah, it's not that they're, oh my gosh, it's because of all these books. Okay. I was raised in a straight household.
Yeah, didn't make you straight.
So, yeah, it's just a ridiculous argument, just an absolute ridiculous argument.
It's not having the information and sometimes not willing to look for it, honestly, before they make their decision. But so getting back to your story, I think you kind of slipped in there at some point. So was your husband actually the first person that you told, actually? As part of...
Well, I actually told him when we got married that I had been interested in women. I did tell him. So he knew going into the marriage that I had been interested in women because we just shared everything with each other. So he knew that. I didn't have a word for it at the time. I mean, bisexuality, that word didn't really gain popularity until later, but I didn't have a word for it at all. I now know that that means bisexuality. But so he knew that attraction, of course, we were both in church, and so that was considered sinful and part of my sin. And so I was confessing my sin to him. Here's my sin. I like women too. So, so it was a sin that I was to avoid and stay away from.
So then fast forward to when the marriage
and then I was just so unhappy and had been very unhappy for so long. And because of that unhappiness, I started thinking again, well, I really would like to do that. And and I'm the happiest I've ever been in my entire life. I have an amazing, amazing wife who values me. And it's not just about love, it's about respect and honoring each other and always striving to help each other to be better and to grow. It's an absolutely amazing relationship. And I've learned so much more about how to be a better human being, about how to be a better wife. It's amazing what a true reciprocated equal partnership will do for a marriage.
Yeah. So did you find it easier to tell friends than to tell family?
So I had a very interesting situation in that a lot of my friends I didn't have the chance to come out to because I came out on Facebook, which I don't necessarily recommend.
Oh.
So I did a stupid thing early on in my relationship with my wife, and I had lied to her. Well, my wife had a past of being lied to. And that did not go well. It went so not well that she broke up with me. She was like, I don't deal with lying. I don't do liars. And I was just absolutely devastated. And I now understand a lot more about why I lied and how it's why I don't lie anymore. But I understand a lot of that was just personal hurt and trying to cover myself and protect myself. And I ended up hurting myself and her even more. But because of that, I thought I have nothing to lose, because to me, she was my soulmate and is my soulmate, continues to be my soulmate. And I didn't know what I was going to do. It was so tragic because my entire life, very few people know about this, but my entire life, and I think you actually may, but I had this very anxious. The only way to describe it is I always had this anxious seeking feeling, and I didn't know what it
Mhm.
was. I always had this anxious seeking feeling, and it's kind of just always just kind of push it down because I know what it was. It's just
Mhm.
always there. As far back as I can remember, it's always been there. And wow, the moment Myra and I hugged, and it had been what we've been talking for 7 weeks. We hadn't met each other yet. We've been talking for 7 weeks, every day for 7 weeks. And I met her, and we held each other. Wow. And that feeling went away. That
Mm.
seeking feeling, that empty seeking feeling I had had my whole life just disappeared.
Wow.
And so, wow. I think
Yeah.
it's because she's my soulmate. And I knew my whole life that my soulmate was out there, and that was that seeking. Now we're getting into spiritual stuff.
Mhm. Mhm. It's all right.
But yeah, I believe that. We believe that we were a couple in previous lives. Yeah, it's very interesting, fascinating, and wonderful. And why people would want to keep this people from being happy, I just
Yeah.
don't know. I just don't get that. I just
Yeah,
don't get it.
they don't get it. I mean, hopefully through more people talking about it and their personal experiences. I mean, that's the beauty of you sharing your personal experience is it's not put in a way that's generalized because then people tend to take it as all or nothing or like, oh, everybody's like that or whatever. Like it's specifically your story. And I think the more people can relate or can hear specific details of someone's story, it doesn't feel so big and like a big cloud that they don't understand that's coming at them. It's this is one little piece of information from one person. And that's real. You know, even getting face to face with someone that you may hate or that you may never think that you could ever have anything in common with. But if you can sit down face to face with them and just have a conversation, there's a much better chance that you're going to hear each other, that you're going to really, listen and start to understand a little better. You
Mhm.
still may not agree, you may not end up having all the same feelings or thoughts or beliefs afterwards, but you can see their perspective if you can just listen to individual stories, I think. Um, I even think that's been one of the blessings of me getting into hypnotherapy. Every single client that I see is unique and different. And not that I hadn't already been kind of inclusive and welcoming and stuff like that before I did this, but it's made that, go even further because you just can't judge a book by its cover. You really can't put people in buckets of judgment. you know, it's so much better if you get to know people individually. And just a lot of people, I don't think, take the time to do that when it's something
Mhm.
that makes them uncomfortable, right? They
Yeah.
don't prioritize it because they just would rather say it's easier to go, oh, they're it's sinful. It's still sinful to me. I don't want to look into it. I don't want to understand any more about it. But I'm hoping that the more actually stories do get shared and even characters on TV, even if it's not a legit, an actual person talking to you about their personal experience, even when it's characters that are getting developed on TV that people can watch their story. I mean,
Mhm.
Modern Family, I think, probably made huge strides to open a
Yeah.
lot
Yeah,
of
it
people's
means a lot.
eyes, right? I mean, that was probably one of the first times on network television, on primetime network television, two men kissed each other, right? I mean, when you start to see stuff like that, it becomes not so taboo.
Mhm.
So hopefully everybody that shares their story, you and everybody else that has an opportunity to share their story is starting to break through those those barriers and walls that people have of misunderstanding.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's
So
interesting. I finished telling the story. So I thought I'd lost her, and because of the lie. And I came home and I thought, what am I going to do? She's told me she doesn't ever want to see me again. And that's why it was important to share that story about,
Yeah.
you know, the change in my body. And I thought, I'm gonna come out on Facebook. And I just didn't see any other way. I was like, she's not taking my phone call. She's not talking to me. So I'm just going to come out on Facebook and talk about this stupid thing I did. And that this stupid thing I did may have lost me the love of my life.
Wow.
And I did. I came out on Facebook, and I over the course of the day, I probably lost over 1,000 followers. It was hard. It was hard to watch it all just dwindle away. And, you know, people were really encouraging. There's some really good things that come out of it. It's so easy to see the negative, but there were some really good things because there were some people that really rallied to my side. You know, and the great thing was out of that was that my wife said, "What are you doing?" What are you doing? And it started the conversation again. She couldn't believe that I would do that I would confess that I lied and that I would come out on Facebook and risk my business to be with her, because that is kind of, depending on where you are and what's going on, it can affect your business. It absolutely can affect your business.
Yeah, that's a whole nother aspect of it, right? I mean, there's the concern about losing friends, potentially, concern about losing family.
Family, absolutely. Family. Lost my sister.
Even business.
Yeah, definitely.
And particularly when you are an entrepreneur, when you have your own business. I suppose there's also the concern for some people that they might lose their job if they're working for someone else.
Yeah, depending on if there aren't, whether there's protections in place or not, it's still a concern.
Yep.
There's all kinds of things that people can do. One of the things that's really interesting, and I hope you don't mind me going into this, is that one of the things that I realized, there were so many dichotomies that happened when I came out, which is, one is, that whole thing about happy wife, happy life. So just looking at that, the happy wife, happy life, it taught me so many things about how the church taught me to think as a wife and how society taught me to think as a wife. And if you take those two things and bring it into a marriage with another woman, it can cause some problems because especially if you're both have previously been in a marriage, we hadn't, it was just me. And so I was the only one dealing with these issues. And I realized just how many insidious little things were going on in my head that were okay to do in my straight relationship and potentially encouraged. Whereas in a relationship where it truly is equal, I had to change how I thought about things. And that was really interesting for me. I'm trying to think of a for example. Something will come to me, but if I could think of a for example, I will. But that's one of them. Happy wife, happy life. Well, we're both wives, so shouldn't we both be happy? And well, if we should both be happy, well, then shouldn't everybody be happy in a marriage? Why is it only just the happy wife? It just causes so many issues. And then the other thing that really threw me was I have we had moved, my wife and I had moved down to Florida, and a friend of ours that we had made a friend, and she's like, "Oh my gosh, you must just love it down here in Palm Bay. It's just so oh my gosh, it's just so accepting and so wonderful here. This county, Brevard County, is just, I mean, you guys must love it here.
Was this a straight friend?
Or
okay.
This is a straight friend. Now, if anybody's watching and you look up Brevard County and how friendly it is to the LGBT community, you'll find not so much. So it really opened my eyes, really, really opened my eyes to how often as white people we dismiss something that somebody else says because we haven't experienced it.
Mm-hmm.
And that is so incredibly insane to think. This country is crazy. We're all taught to think as individuals, which is the worst thing in the world in the end, because then we think our thoughts are the most important. And if I haven't experienced it or I haven't seen it, then it can't be true. So people would look at us crazy when we tell them, when we used to live on the coastline in North Carolina, because we used to live out in Salter Path. People would be like, "Are you crazy?" We would be out there and went to a picnic. It was not a picnic. It was a parade. Went to a parade, and we had there was a couple standing next to us with their little girl, and went over to give some candy because they threw from the truck. They threw all the candy at my wife's and my feet, and not at the kids. And so we grabbed some of the candy and brought it over. And the dad was just like, ugh, like it was poison that we were bringing over. It was tainted with gayness. And then he went into his car. We were like, he was just. He was livid, and my wife was certain that he went to his car and just sat there and fondled his gun. I don't know. I didn't see a gun, but yeah. And people are like, oh, not at our beach. Not at our beach. And how often do we do that to Black people?
Yeah.
You know, oh, well, you must not have listened. You must not have followed directions. I don't see that. That doesn't happen to me. I've never seen it happen to anybody. And anytime that's happened to any of my friends, that's not happened. You must be mistaken. And what?
Yeah.
And I thought, well, where does all this come from? And I was thinking about, okay, this whole revelation that I had about being a nice girl, right? I mean, everybody, at least in the 80s, I can't speak for other generations, but I know that you and I were raised to be nice girls, right? We were taught to be good girls.
Yeah.
You listen, you respect your elders, you do what you're told, you don't make noise, you don't make waves, and you need to be an example for your sister. Okay, that was mine. You need to be an example for your
brother,
sister.
so yeah.
Yeah. And so we're taught, right, to not make waves. And here's where the whole racism thing is really interesting, right? The whole respect your elders. Well, a lot of the elders when we were growing up were fucking, racist. They're racist. But here's the thing. So you and I grew up, right? Do you consider yourself racist?
I don't, but I've had moments where I went, "Whoa."
Yeah. So let me help you why I believe every white person is racist. Okay. And I'm going to help you to understand, because here's the thing. Because we were raised that way, not make waves and do all of that. When we see a racist, as a white woman describes a racist, right? We see that we were raised with, well, a racist hangs the Negro. They call them the N-word. They chase them. All these things where they're active. These are active things that doing to another race. So we're looking at that going, no, we're good girls.
Right.
We're good girls. We've been raised to be good. I would never do that. Now, there are some white women that would. I'm talking about us. Okay. And so we're looking at it going, but we're not racist. We would never do that. I would never do that. And my friends would never do that. But we were also raised to not talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
Right? You don't complain about it. Oh, so-and-so, my farmer John, he said the N-word. Shh, just leave him alone. Respect your elders.
Yep.
And so we're raised not to make a stink about it,
Mm-hmm.
which is white supremacy. Just, I mean, we
Yep.
keeping it in play because, and it's so insidious. Like, I'm a videographer, had been a videographer. I still do it, but that's not my main focus anymore. But I did commercials. And I remember showing a commercial to a friend of mine, black friend. She's watching it. And she came back to me and she said, so do they only serve white people? Is that what they do? And I was like, what are you talking about? She says, every single person in your video is white. Do they not work with black people or Indians? Or I didn't even see it.
Yeah.
She thought the company had told me to only use white people.
Mm.
They hadn't. That was on me. And so I had to look at it and I was like, wow, why didn't I put other people into the commercial? Why is it only white people? I mean, it really hit me. Why is that? And so it made me start looking at, well, how do I view things? And then I started looking and seeing, wow, most of the things that I'm looking at are white. I have to search to find people of color.
Yeah.
Wow, things really are whitewashed. I mean, it was just this kind of awakening. And then the next awakening was, well, as a gay person, okay, as a member of the LGBT community, I don't know if somebody's safe unless they talk about it.
Right.
How do I know? If you don't share any LGBT people, if you don't put a rainbow up every once in a while, and I know rainbow and God and stuff, but if you don't do things that indicate to me that you are aware of my position in society, it's hard
And
for me
accepting
to
of
trust
it.
you.
Yeah.
Then you get into the category of men versus bear.
Right.
You might be a really bad person. As far as I know, you're anti-LGBTQ.
Yep.
If you are not, if as white people, you are not following black creators, Indian creators, just other creators besides white people, you are part of the problem.
Mm-hmm.
You are perpetuating the systemic racism in the culture. And it helps to keep it going because you're doing nothing to fight against it. And if you're not doing anything to fight against it and you're perpetuating it, it comes across as you being this way. And so
Complicit,
that's why,
at least.
Complicit. And in your complicitness, and when I say you, I mean, I've done it too. In your complicitness, in our complicitness, let me put it that way, in white people's complicitness, in not standing up to it and perpetuating it, yes, we are promoting in our own way by not doing anything racism and keeping the white supremacy going. There was a big wake up for me, and so I started following black creators and black writers and reading black books and watching black movies. And there's so much that we're not even aware of, and I'm still unpacking racist shit. I mean, I remember when the whole thing came up recently where it was, okay, great, so men versus bear. What about, would you rather be in a room with a white woman or a white man? And the black women went, oh, I don't want to be in a room with a white woman. And I went, what? But I'm a good girl. Yeah. So then you have to unpack all of that. Well, why is that? And I think that's where this all comes from. It's this whole training to be a good girl. And so in that training, we're not even recognizing when we're hurting other people.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. Very interesting. And so part of what I'm hearing you say is that you haven't had to live through the racist type of culture, but you can empathize because you see the connections, you see the parallels with what you have lived through in terms of bias and unfair
it made it
treatment
so
and
much
things like that.
easier,
You
and
can
it shouldn't
see,
have taken that. It shouldn't have taken me coming out and participating loud and proud in my culture, in my whatever, my marriage, sure, in the LGBTQI society. It shouldn't take that for me to go, oh,
yeah,
I see what the Black people are saying. I see what the people of color. I mean, it shouldn't take that. It did.
yeah,
And so now I think it's really important for me and for anybody else that is sees it, that we just let people know, you know, it's not enough to not be actively racist. Also need to be actively anti-racist. Just standing by is not going to change it. It's just going to keep going, and that hurts everybody.
yeah.
It just hurts everybody.
Well, and I think, you know, on top of the good girl upbringing that we had, some of the things that I think people are running into over the last, let's say, 8 years, is potentially legitimate concern about violent backlash
Oh, sure.
when pushing back against people who are very demonstrably racist or anti-LGBTQ and things like that. I remember, I mean, when I was involved with Unity down here in Melbourne, I was involved in the Pride Parade. You know, we marched in the parade for Pride Fest and stuff like that several years. But I also remember that there was one year after a certain someone got into office, that there had been threats that we were made aware of, that some kind of, you know, violent group, I don't know if it was Proud Boys or something, I don't know if they were that notable, but some kind of group like that was planning to make themselves known basically and do some violence at the Pride Fest in Melbourne. And I thought, even in little, like, it's almost like you expect it maybe in a bigger city or something like that. But I'm like, come on, aren't we safe here in just little like Brevard County? Why do they need to make a statement here?
Nope. Yeah, they're pretty there are a lot of demonstrating in Brevard.
Yeah. And so it's, you know, it's not that I think everybody needs to step out and potentially risk their life
No,
when people are kind of
absolutely
crazy
not.
like that.
Absolutely
But there's
not.
other ways that you can still kind of stand up for it without putting yourself in the line of fire, so to speak.
Yeah, and I do want to say I'm not advocating for, you know, if you need to be doing this. That's not what I'm saying at all. What I'm saying is that it's not going to change unless more people make changes
Right.
and help each other, just to treat each other humanely. We're all just humans. We're all just humans. I'll tell you one of the things, I don't know why this just jumped in my head again, so I'm going to say it because it has. But I remember when I was going to church, I remember this one sermon where they were talking about gay people, and the person in the up at the pulpit podium said, you know, what's going to happen next, or women or men and women going to want to marry dogs or horses?
Yeah.
Now, at the time, you know, I mean, it's just kind of like, okay, whatever. So same sex means we all turn into animals. I'm not sure. But anyway, it hit me that, oh, wow, that's what the church thinks about women. Because if a woman having sex with another woman is like two dogs, I mean, listen,
Mhm.
if a woman having sex with another woman is like two dogs, there's a problem. There's a problem because that means that you're not looking at women as human beings.
Right.
Has nothing
And
to
that's
do
a
with
trademark move anytime you're
oh,
trying to protect against your own group or protect your own group by making another group seem less than human, right? I mean,
yeah.
it was Nazis did it. Anybody that's been part of like the hate culture basically does something to try to dehumanize the side that they're trying to protect themselves from.
Mhm.
So it's another example of that. And there was something I saw the other day that kind of ties into that, where there's so many falsehoods and generalizations that get spread amongst the, whether it's the religious right or just conservatives, whatever group you want to really attribute it to, that really do try to make it sound like, oh well, if we open it up to that, bestiality is like bestiality is
And that's
next.
just
And
it. Bestiality
yeah,
has nothing to do with a woman having sex with a woman or a man having
I
sex
know,
with a man.
right?
We're humans.
I know that, and you know
No,
that.
I know, but I think it's important to say for people who listen, that
Hmm.
it's humanity, and it's anyway, it's just crazy. I just
Yeah,
think it's
and
crazy.
it's now there are some unique things going on with teens these days that are like acting like cats or something. Like there was something about kitty litter in high school bathrooms or something like that, or litter boxes.
Yeah, I don't know
That's
about
a
that.
whole different thing too. That's
Yeah,
not in any way
that's
related.
that is not related to this.
Yeah,
I don't know what that is,
right.
but yeah,
But they'll glob it all together because if
they will.
that's, if people will say, well, that's ridiculous, then well, let's tag this onto that and keep that in
Mhm.
the ridiculous realm so that nobody tries to do it. So yeah, crazy.
Yeah, it's like
So
going to one drag show, like a 10 PM drag show and going, "Oh, we can't show this stuff to children." Well, there's no children there at 10 o'clock at night, and they get all upset
right.
because a drag star is going to go and read at a library. Well, obviously, they're not gonna be doing their 10 PM show. It's just it's just insanity. Anyway, that's a
Yeah.
whole 'nother show.
Oh, it is. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we could go down that path forever. Um, another thing I think we talked about a little bit before we came on, and we haven't really hit it, I don't think, since we've been live. Um, what about your coming out experience tied into, or did you kind of uncover even more ahas through your 27-month experiment?
I think the biggest thing that I got from that was just understanding more and more and more just how tied in our minds are to the system that helps to keep other people down. And it takes actively, I just didn't see just how actively I need to be thinking and listening a lot more than talking when
Mm,
somebody from um, well, I don't know that we are the majority anymore, but what we used to say is a minority, that if a minority is saying something, even that word, gosh, it's just
mhm.
horrible. By saying minority, you're basically saying, well, we are in a lot of people's minds, that's better. It's better to be in the majority, so we are better. It's just
Mhm.
words. Words have power.
Yeah.
Words have
Well,
power.
and even that seems like it's a power thing, right? So if the idea of being in the minority or the being in the majority being better,
It's power.
only the only way that's true is that if you are in the majority, there are more people like you, therefore you may have more power in numbers, I guess. But that's nothing basically.
Yeah.
So, so if we could kind of circle back and think about or share with us then
Mhm.
what you felt like were the main leashes for you and,
Yeah,
and kind of your bite moment, your bark?
So the leashes were definitely societal expectations, church training and expectations, and fear, just absolute fear of all of that, and shame because I couldn't meet up to the expectations that were being set societally and through church. So it was a lot of shame and pain. So that was definitely leashes. As far as the bite, I just couldn't live inauthentic anymore. And what's so interesting is that my entire life just seems to be continuing to become more and more and more authentic, which is crazy. But just when I think I've reached a level of authenticity that is the pinnacle, there's just more to uncover and discover, and which is really fascinating. So the bark would be kind. Really, just be kind. You don't know what other people are going through. We are all human. Everybody is just trying to get through life and get through it as happy as we can.
Mm-hmm.
I guess I will share that the most beautiful thing in the world, as scary as it was, and it was absolutely terrifying to come out. Shouldn't be, but it was.
Mm-hmm.
It is the most rewarding thing, one of the absolute most rewarding things that I have ever done for myself. Absolutely. Because I get to be me.
Yeah.
And constantly uncovering myself. And the more I uncover of myself, the more fun I'm having. And that's amazing. So that would be my bark. Discover yourself, enjoy yourself, and love people.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's great that you, even beyond having sort of the awareness that you are you're feeling more authentic about things now, it's also for you that physical sensation, even when you talked about how when you and Myra hugged the first time, that had to really like lock it in for you, like, oh shit.
Blew my mind. It was like a bomb going off, but in reverse. I mean, it was so incredible. And since then, I have never felt that feeling again, ever.
Right.
And that's amazing.
Yeah. And I truly believe that, like what you said, once you started to kind of find your authentic self, or kind of peel away the layers of the onion, I think that's kind of what life is, right?
Yeah.
That's really what we're all here to do, is peel the layers back and figure out who we truly are. And then as we figure that out, we can then share it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Share our experiences, share our barks
for everybody, instead of all the hate and discourse that goes on. Let's make this a better life.
Yeah. Which is really part of what, as I mentioned in the intro, that's a big part of what your workshop, what your program is all about.
Yeah, and I put my website up there, DeirdreBeacham.com. On the first page, you can see the workshop, the Flex workshop. And I built it. It's 3 days. And if you just like to get a copy of the workshop when we're done, you can sign up. Doesn't cost you a thing. But if you'd like to come into the workshop and be with me over the 3 days, just an hour and a half each day, and we're going to delve into, in this workshop, different things that are keeping you from being yourself, keeping you from being visible in your work life, in your personal life. What is it that's holding you back? And I'm going to help you to figure that out. I'm doing it's only $77 to attend live. But you'll see right there, if you just go to DeirdreBeacham.com and just go to the Flex workshop. Love to have you there. Thank you.
Beautiful. Yeah.
Yay.
Awesome.
Well, thank you
yay.
so much for this was fun. I hope that the audience got something out of it. It was interesting to bring all of those things up again, and the tie into racism. I just think is really interesting. That just kind of hit me recently, as far as the good girl training and how that ties into perpetuating racism.
Yeah,
but yeah, that wild
yeah, and
stuff.
just quick story on my side based on the racism thing. Like, I never thought of myself as a racist. Certainly as a kid, I lived in a small town in Ohio that didn't have a lot of Black people, but there were a handful of Black people in my school. I was friends with them. So to me, I thought, well, then that means I'm not a racist. I got no problem being friends with a Black kid. But the thing that really kind of opened my eyes was my aunt and uncle. So my aunt is my mom's sister, and then she married a Black man out in California, and he's actually my favorite uncle at this point. But I remember when I went to visit them one time, and we went to his family's place for a barbecue, and it was probably the first time in my life that I was the minority in that area. And it didn't I didn't run away or something, but it kind of caught my attention. I was like, oh, wow, this is a different kind of feeling. That I don't have to deal with this ever until now. So that was a big aha for me, that I realized, whoa, I'm not just everybody's the same, because I definitely noticed when I was in the minority.
Don't you?
Yeah. We were great people. It was a fun time. But yeah, you don't realize the stuff that's going on until you're in a similar situation. Yep.
Yeah. And it's important to be aware of that. That's cool that you had that situation.
Yep.
Yeah.
And he's truly, I'm in touch with him all the time. He's my favorite uncle. But I'm looking forward to the rest of our interviews, or the rest of our podcast this month. I think we've got some really good people on everybody's going to have a different story, right? That it's going to be unique and different for everyone. So I'm excited to hear each experience and what it's
I know
been
one
like
of the people. Yeah, I know that one of the people that we have, it's going to be later in the month, but she has lupus. And as a result of her diagnosis, she ended up going to the Dalai Lama to talk to the Dalai Lama. And she has a fascinating story. She didn't like his answer. She didn't like his answer. And she was furious, actually, after having met the Dalai Lama. And she has a fascinating story to share with us. So every single story, I think, this month is going to be fun and fascinating. So
Yep. Looking forward to it.
Thank you so much for spending the time to interview me, Jenny.
Yeah.
I appreciate that.
Thank you for sharing your story. I think it was great.
Thank you. So we look forward to seeing you next Friday, 3 p.m. Eastern time, whatever that is. I will have to figure that out one of these times, whether it's EST or EDT. I'm just going to say Eastern.
Yeah.
And we'll see you either on Facebook or YouTube. And we hope that you get unleashed AF.
That's right.
You take care. I'm going to put the music. You get us out of here.
All right. Sounds good.
I'm done trying to live up to others' expectations. Family, society, class, race, sex, or religions. It's time to break free from the isms that make us feel like we're in prison. I'm ready to be unleashed as fuck. I'm ready to